r/AskReddit by Reddit edits. Serious, what is something scary that has happened to you that you cannot explain rationally? I live in a condominium and we own 2 apartments on the 7th and 8th floor. The only way to move in between them is to step out of the apartment, take the elevator or the staircase, and enter the other one. One night, we ran out of ice cream upstairs and my mom told me to go get some from the downstairs freezer. So I took the keys to the 7th floor's apartment, and since it was dinner time, no one was there. I walked into the pitch dark and realized that someone was sitting on the sofa. So I flipped the switch to see my dad just sitting there. It was kinda weird, but I just went to get the ice cream and asked if he had a key to lock up. No answer. I shrugged and thought, well, if he came in and locked the door behind him, he must have one. Went back upstairs and my dad was sitting there eating dinner. I freaked out and asked how the heck did he get up here so fast, and everyone told me that he's been here all this time. Told them it wasn't possible cause I just saw him downstairs, but no one believed me. Now I never go down there alone. I dreamed I was being choked and woke up to find my own hands around my throat. There was a small door that led to attic space in my bedroom, 11 years old to 13, and it became habit that I would shut the door as I walked into my bedroom a couple times a week. I didn't think anything of it, just assumed my mom didn't close it all the way when she left it. After a while I made the mistake of joking with her when she made a comment about me not picking up after myself. I said something like, every night I have to close the attic door behind you. How about you shut it all the way when you're done? She then informed me that she hasn't been in the attic in months. Asked my brother, nope. Asked my father, nope. So then I started to pay really close attention to it, making sure it was closed in the morning, checking it after school, checking after dinner, then head up to bed and open. After a couple months of wondering, studying, experimenting, I thought I'd see what happens if I just don't shut it. Opened the door before school and checked it after school, still open. Checked it after dinner, still open. Before bed, still open. Now I'm laying in bed, mind going crazy with the open door across the room. Decide to check it out, so I roll over and focus on the black space into the attic to see a face staring back at me. Bolt downstairs, wake parents, get ridiculed by brother, switch bedrooms brother, move into new house about 6 months later, due to expanding household. New physics teacher and his wife bought our house. I cold forgotten all about that event and chalked it up to me having an overactive mind. But then my senior year I discovered how awesome our physics teacher was. Became my favorite class and by far my favorite teacher. End of senior year my friend and I took our VHS camcorder around town, doing mostly silly things, but then took it to my old house to see what they've done with the place. We got a very fun tour. I got to tell stories about all the projects my dad did that were still part of the house. Then the wife leads us upstairs to show us the sewing room. I ask, jokingly, notice anything strange in this room? And her face goes blank. On camera, she asks what I mean, and I try to shrug it off, but end up saying something about the attic door. She confirmed that every time she comes up to sew, the attic door is open. She then tells us that the second day of being in the house, their dog, German Shepherd, had gone into the room, but would not go back downstairs. He started barking and could not be consoled, and then jumped through the window, landing on the tin roof over the porch, and then running off. The dog did not come back until the next day and has not stepped foot into the hallway that leads upstairs since. I had the initial thought that I could show my parents and brother the story I had on film, but I decided to just let it be. My grandmother's entire life she had a recurring nightmare. In this nightmare, she would be walking down a long dark hallway, turn to the left, open a door, and see something terrible. She'd always wake up before seeing what it was. In her 40s, she, her husband, my dad, and my aunt were on vacation. They booked the hotel at the last minute, so they ended up having to get 2 rooms with 2 twin beds on opposite sides of the floor. My dad wakes up around 3 AM and can automatically tell something's not right. He calls out in the darkness, "Dad." No response. He turns on the bedside light. "Dad," he says, a little louder this time. Still no response. Getting worried, he slides out of bed and shakes his father. He doesn't wake up. My dad ran down the hotel hallway to my grandma's room and started banging on the door. My grandma worriedly opens the door and my dad shouts something's wrong with dad. He leads her down the hallway, a long hallway, to the last door on the left. My grandmother reaches the door, turns to left, and sees her husband dead in bed. Heart attack. She never had the dream again. But I didn't want to put two stories in one post. But here you go. This one is from a teacher of mine. Great guy, but he swears on his pride that this one is true. It was during his college days. He was living in an apartment with 3 other guys. They had been living there for a couple weeks when weird stuff started to happen. It all started in one of the bedrooms. The bed was on a huge wrought iron bed frame and was in front of a wall outlet. This was the outlet that the bedside light had to be plugged into. Every so often the lamp cord would be unplugged and thrown out of place. He thought it was just his friends being clever. Emphasis on the plural, because this thing was heavy. Weird stuff happened for the next couple weeks, but it was an older apartment, and neighbors will be neighbors, and old buildings have their quirks, so they wrote it off as nothing. One night they had some friends come over, so one of them had to sleep in the futon in the living room. The friend was woken up in the middle of the night for no real reason, but when he opened his eyes there was a thin blonde girl hunched on the ground next to him. Now not much can make a 6 feet 4 inches 250 pounds tough guy panic, but this did. He just stared, hollering and yelping for his friends to come out as he grabbed for every square inch of the sheets. His friends thought he was just messing with them, but his face said otherwise. They just hung out for the rest of the night till he calmed down. They eventually ordered pizza, just because they were no longer tired. When the delivery guy got here he was surprised. Hey, this was my old place when I was in school. My teacher chuckled. Hey, did weird stuff happen when you lived here? The pizza guy went blank. Oh duck, you've seen her too. They moved out the next day. I lived near a camp that I used to attend as a child. When I was 7, there was a counselor at the camp who was Russian. The camp has a very large staff exchange program with many different countries, and very weird at that. Counselors said he was incredibly fast, and during staff-only campfires he would catch, skin, and eat live rabbits. He could do this crazy sleeper hold move. It essentially was a strangling move that knocked you out for a few seconds. You came to and were fine a minute later. I saw him do it on a counselor once. The guy was out for about 10 seconds. He was forbidden to do it after that. However, kids got curious and started asking him to do the move. He would do it in secret, but he would increase the severity of his holds, which would in turn keep the kid knocked out for a longer period of time. One day, a camper went missing. He wasn't in his bunk, despite going to bed with his cabin that night. They did a camp-wide search, keeping us all on the soccer field for about 2 hours. The counselors had to start searching the water. They found his body under the sailing dock, completely out cold. Edit. He was alive, but very unconscious. He had the strangle marks around his neck. Everyone knew who it was. They arrested the Russian guy and deported him back to Russia. Turns out they never even sent an exchange counselor. Nobody knew who the duck he was. My 4-year-old daughter was supposedly asleep when I heard noise coming from her upstairs bedroom. I tried to listen, but could not make out what was being said. I approached the room, and she stopped talking. Thinking I alarmed her, I went into the room. At the time she was sharing it with her 3-year-old sister. I walked in and saw the 4-year-old sitting up in bed. I smiled and said, "Is everything okay?" She said fine, but her sister said they were keeping her up. I asked who. My 4-year-old said sorry, but that she was talking. When I asked her who she was talking to, my 3-year-old sat up and said, "The girl in the window. She said you were coming." After I cracked a brick, I asked who the girl was, and they both said a girl comes and stands in front of the window at night and talks to them. Not knowing what to say, I said okay, tucked them in, and hung around outside their door. The next day I asked about the girl. They said she came back but was mad. I waited a few days and asked again. My 4-year-old said the girl in the window was still mad. I forgot about it for about a week, when my wife said, "Who are the girls talking to upstairs?" Freaked out, I ran upstairs and both girls were sitting under the window looking up. They turned and looked at me and asked if I wanted to meet the girl. When they turned around, disappointed, they said the girl left. It has been about 5 years since, and I have not heard about the girl in the window since then. I have a couple of stories, but this one always gets me. When I was around 7, my grandmother took care of a baby whose mother was an alcoholic and drug addict. This woman would bring her child, let's call him John, to my grandmother's house and leave him there for months at a time. Needless to say, our family became very attached and thought of him as part of the family. His mother came to get him one night and her drunk boyfriend flips the car. John was in a coma for about 3 or 4 days. One night my older brother wakes everyone in the house up screaming and crying, saying that John is dead. Once my parents get him calmed down, he tells them that John came into his room crying, saying that he has to leave, but he is scared and wants my brother to come with him. While my parents are trying to convince my brother that it was just a dream, the phone rings, and it is my uncle calling from the hospital to inform us that John had died. This happened over 30 years ago, but I still get goosebumps thinking about it. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content.